Hello and welcome to the Cam Show, Unpacking Within. I am your host, Cam, and on my podcast, we dive into thought provoking topics that encourage you to think and act differently than we normally would. I say you, but also me. This is a judgment free space because we all have our own journeys, and who the fuck you to judge anybody anyway? Okay? A friend of mine and I were discussing the topic forgiveness and how freeing it can feel to cast forgiveness on somebody that did us wrong, right? So I want you to kind of go back to that last person that's been in the back of your mind around like, this person did me dirty and I never want to speak to them. I never want to talk to them. I want you to go to that place. Think about it. Forgiveness involves the act of letting go of resentment, anger, or feelings of revenge towards someone who has wronged you. It is a voluntary and intentional process that can lead to emotional healing and reconciliation. On today's episode, we unpack the power of forgiveness and how it can be an extremely powerful tool to heal and grow. I want to kind of back up and let you in on a little bit of personal things that have been happening because life has been lifing again, so much shit. I have been dealing with some inconsistencies, some procrastination, and they keep trying to knock my ass out. Okay. And some weeks they're winning, other weeks I'm like, let's go. Right. Like both fists. I'm trying to still acknowledge that, but I know that I created this podcast because there were so many people that I was having normal conversations with and conversations where they should be publicized to where other people can learn and grow. But I also published it because I knew that our topics would be of value for other people that were interested in learning and growing. So I would love to let you know that I will no longer be publishing episodes on Friday. Friday seems to be the day where I truly want to unwind and I don't even want to connect to the world, right? So after that 5 o'clock, after the 6 o'clock, whenever I'm ending work, I want to shut things down and just be present in the moment, whether that be get some wine, having some dinner with my partner, or just being lazy on the couch. I know that I feel super creative on the weekends and I get a different perspective. And now we will be focused on publishing episodes each Monday morning. So Monday mornings are really like a refresh. You kind of see things from a different perspective and you are kind of gearing into your week. I will also share that from my perspective, and at first, forgiveness used to make me feel so small. Like I allowed somebody to get over on me and that I didn't stand on my right to get them back the way that they got me. It made me feel like I was being the bigger person. And again, I felt like I was allowing that person to get the best of the good side of who I was all along. This is not always the case. In fact, forgiveness doesn't mean that I condoned or excuse a person that did me wrong, but it simply means I was truly able to allow the feelings of revenge to cease. I would love to go to the place where maybe you have somebody in your life where you're like, they're dead to me. I never want to see them. I never want to talk to them. And I kind of want you to go there and stay there just for a quick moment. Holding on to grudges causes a lot of hurt and harm to our body. It causes stress, anger, resentment, which overall affects your mental and your physical health. And now that I am oftentimes on the other side of forgiveness, I feel so much more empowered to not allow people's actions to affect me in the way that I will regret later. From my point of view, it really has showed me that I must continue to hold on to my inner power by allowing things that happened the way that they did, but still forgiving them at the same time. I've shared this in previous episodes before, but I am such a control freak. I will admit and I will stand my ground in saying that I think me wanting to control things in my life stems from fear around the unknown. Sometimes I even like to know. I mean, I'll give you an example of maybe not control, maybe just like doing too much. But like whenever I go somewhere, I'm always like, who's all going to be there, whether it be a dinner or a function. And sometimes people around me, my close friends or my family, they know who's going to be there. They're like, these people will be there. And in past, I would opt out. That's not to say that that question isn't wrong because I'm Black, right? And it's almost like you're going to a cookout. Who all going to be there? Sometimes I don't have the brain and the mental capacity to want to be around certain people, whether that be trying to unpack something or maybe going to certain situations that have happened in the past. But I am learning to, again, let things go and let things be and to try to live more in the moment and live more present. Again, you see often things we see that people have done to us, and we use that as a way to define the relationship and how and why it ended. Forgiveness has the power to build relationships, to rebuild relationships, and work towards not what you had with that person, but really a new perspective on the relationship. It's also understood that when people are willing to forgive and move forward, it can strengthen the bond and foster a more deeper connection, sometimes a more deeper connection than what you actually had already had. You're allowed to see the person from a different lens at this point. I will admit and say that forgiveness can feel so awkward at the beginning because, again, maybe the control freak in you or the control freak in me, you're like, no, like I'm done with the person. I have no space. I don't want the person in my space, which is perfectly fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. At the same time, you're allowed to see the person from a different lens again at this point, but know that it's much more for the good of your health versus the other person. So I talked about some internal factors that happen when you kind of bottle up hurt and anger and fear just inside of you and how that can show up externally and how unhealthy it is. I was recently talking to my therapist about a situation that happened years ago and kind of what helped stem this topic or for lack thereof why I wanted to publish a episode on the power of forgiveness. But have you ever heard of the phrase hurt people just hurt people because they were hurt by somebody else? I think that's just it. There's so much truth in that. And I feel like there's so much truth that can be learned on forgiving somebody and letting things go. Even though I am not going to discount the fact that forgiveness is really, really hard. And I think we all have to be in a place where we're willing to forgive the person, we're willing to go through the events and talk through the events that happened, and willing to hear the other person's perspective if that's what you want, if that's what you seek in that situation. Some people are able to forgive and say, you know what? I forgive. I don't need to talk to the person. I don't need to see the person. I think that's removing the seat from your table for that person. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's all up to your preference and it's what's going on, I think, internally for you to know, okay, this is what's going to serve me and this is how I can best use the situation for my good, for my own good, not for the other person. Again, I know that also in my experience, and even as a Scorpio, my revenge sting goes deep. And I think it's because I've experienced so much pain in my life. I kind of want to pause there. But being a Scorpio, and I think that other Scorpios can relate, but when we sting, we sting. When we sting, and you will likely know that it is a sting. My life has been filled with so much hurt and anger, and more simply, I've literally been given tools to know just how to sting somebody and make it hurt and worth their while to know not to fuck with me again. And to be completely honest here, I used to get such a high knowing that I caused someone pain after they had caused me pain, almost all worse than what they had gave me, right? If you want to give me pain, then I'm gonna take it up 10 notches. And I used to be so proud about that. And again, as I said earlier, I think forgiveness and the power of forgiveness is not just a thing that you learn overnight. You don't learn to forgive people overnight. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years, but there's power in forgiveness and there's power in letting things go that no longer serve us. Being, in some cases, it's talking to parents that we didn't really have a relationship with, maybe when we were children, or we didn't have the ideal relationship with. I know for me, I would always see my friends' relationships with their mothers or their parents. And I would sometimes be a little bit jealous, right? Like, oh, I wish I had that. But I know that we all have our own journey. We all have things that happen to us for a reason. And I think it always works together for our good. So I often felt like it was war for me when I had felt somebody had did me wrong or they knew intentionally that they had did me wrong. And it was up to me. It was my mission and objective to win that war, right? Do I think that's evil? Hell to the yes. I can now sit here and say that I no longer thrive at getting someone back. And it no longer phases me because, in fact, actually getting someone back took more energy away from me. And I give you an example. I feel like a lot of you may know who Nelson Mandela is, and he spent 27 years in prison. 27 years in prison. Just think about that. Like, think about the days and the nights and the hours that you would sit in prison for 20 years. And this was during South Africa's apartheid era. And so many people were up against him. And when Mandela was released, he actually came with a message of forgiveness and trying to reconcile with the people that he was up against. He reached out to people that threw dirt on his name and advocated for peace and unity instead of revenge. And I thought that that was so powerful. And even now, he's still looked to as being one of the most influential people in the world. And again, I think that that just goes back to the power of forgiveness. I found myself strategically getting back at people that got at me for some reason, somehow. Like some way, I used to somehow in some way, I used to put so much effort into getting back at someone, whether that was stalking them on social media, you name it. I actually have a friend, and we actually stopped talking for a few years. Had crossed, or I felt like the person had crossed me on so many different levels. And at this point in my life, I was young. I think we were like 21, 22. There was no going back for me, right? Like, full transparency, the person was dead in my book. It was so hard though because we had so many mutual friends, and it was hard to go to a dinner event or a comedy show or just shows in general around the arts and not be around the person. But I would always give the person the cold shoulder. I was not interacting with them very much. I wasn't sitting near them. Like, I'm just trying to paint the picture around the energy and the effort that was showing up for me towards that person. Again, Scorpio, if you do me wrong, know I'm coming back to you. Um, it may not be at that moment, and it will likely be at a moment where you least expect it. But know that my energy around that time is over for you. Again, I no longer operate from that space because I know that the power of forgiveness is strong and it's more beyond me, right? Like, it's not just about the moment, but oftentimes we don't see and understand that whatever the person did, it's more of a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. Although that can take some time to really sit and ponder internally, but it is the truth. When things happen to you, more than likely it's stemming from the other person's internal battles that they may be facing, and it has nothing to do with you. I think that that should also be marked in the book of maybe I don't know if it's a step one or whatever step it is, but that's part of the process in um, the word forgiving. So another thing that I wanted to call out was, again, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened or what the person did to you, but more about you are more heightened and aware of the damage done. I won't go through the entire story of myself and the person, but it took years to actually sit down with him over the phone and discuss our situation. And we both were able to forgive. And although our relationship isn't where it used to be, I have found a deeper appreciation for our relationship and what it is, how I show up for the person, how they show up for me. And it's just allowed me to breathe a little bit differently. Um, Again, that energy no longer has a hold onto me to keep things bottled up or keep things in. If I'm feeling some kind of way, then I feel more compelled to address it with the person. And I feel more compelled to just speak my truth, whatever that may be. A lot of people I think a lot of people probably think that, like, communication is like saying everything under the sun. I don't think that's always the case. You got to understand when the person may be willing to receive something, willing to not receive something. So if a person is going through a death, don't bring up shit that has happened 3 years ago. Like, oh, we need to talk about this. Like, take a breath, do some strategic thinking, and figure out maybe when would be a good time. Like, hey, I want to talk to you about this. And now that I'm even thinking about it, I kind of go back and I'm like, I remember even sending a text message, or I think we were on the phone. I can't remember what happened, but we tripped up and I ended up saying, like, are you open to talking? And the person was, thankfully. And we set a date. And again, we came to the table being the phone. And we kind of talked about the situation and we talked about the hurt on both ends. And I won't say that I was able to forgive in that moment and let things go, but I was able to forgive and to allow the emotions to kind of cease from my body. Um, yeah, that was a powerful moment for me, and it was something that I feel like if the situation, not with that person, but if a situation did come up again, that I would have the tools necessary to walk into that unforgiveness space or that forgiveness space, to let things be what they are. I will also share that I simply allow the universe to do its thing. As someone to who are used to crave on someone's karma, I no longer give it my energy to those sorts of things. I've found myself more recently to be such a forgiver, and I have found so much grace and forgiveness in myself that I didn't know existed. Think about it, just based on what I've shared. I know that what the person had did to me was wrong, but I also know that the power of forgiveness is so powerful and is so compelling and freeing, and it can allow you to show up differently in the world. It can allow you to show up differently in that relationship with that person, and it could allow the relationship with yourself to grow and fester in positive ways. I will also note that the caring person in me actually hates to see when people go through tough times, right? Like, it's not in my aura to like say like, oh, I can't, I'm so excited that this person is going through this. That's just not in me. I know what hard times feel like, and I don't appreciate them. I appreciate them after the fact, but I don't appreciate them in the moment because sometimes it feels like life is just kicking you in the ass. And sometimes those are people's last strings where they're just like, I can't take anymore. I also know that the caring person in me, again, hates to see when people go through things, but those moments are so necessary for us. I know that also bad times never truly feel good in a moment, but God has given us such a profound way of teaching us things. I also like to note that, as Tasha Cobbs says in her songs, He breaks you to position your heart, and He still does it with grace. I aspire to be more like that. And again, we are all works in progress. But if you can find forgiveness in your heart for a person that did you wrong, I would say maybe the first step is just prayer, or the first step is journaling around the situation and what feelings may be happening for you. Like maybe you have anxiety, maybe you have fear, maybe you have emotions of revenge. Those are all things that are okay. But I think the end goal is to allow those emotions to come. You can breathe them in and you can let them go. Excuse me. Let me get a drink of water. This is some good stuff. Have you ever thought that life shouldn't always be filled with getting somebody back the way that they got you, or that you no longer wanted unforgiveness to make you do things that you weren't proud of after the fact? The thing is, forgiveness is up to each of us, and we're supposed to know and understand that. Forgiveness has the ability to release body anxiety, again, fear, unwanted feelings that may be there that may have stemmed from the experience of whatever you may be upset about or whatever you may be hurt about. Um, but forgiveness can do so many things internally that I wish I had a guest on here, or maybe like a doctor, to talk about forgiveness and the true power of forgiveness and what it can do internally. I found that, I don't know. I mean, this is just my own perspective, but I have found that forgiveness makes you just feel so much more lighter. And I think when we continue to bottle things in and we consider keeping all the stories within and holding on to them, it makes you feel so heavy. And I don't think that God intended for us to walk around with feelings of fear and doubt and anger and resentment. Like, I don't think we were put on earth for that. I think we were put on earth to experience life, however that may look for each of us. I think we're also put on earth to live out our dreams and to pay it forward for other people that are coming right behind us. So, whoever this episode is for, I pray that you learn the true meaning of forgiveness and you let go of the hurt that you've experienced. There's power and there's beauty in forgiving people that have did you wrong. There's power and there's beauty in allowing things to show up for you more presently. The hurt no longer serves you for your good, and it's okay not to forget. and never allow the person back another seat at your table. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. There are things that can be filled with gratitude and filled with joy and comfort and love and support from so many people. And maybe you were looking to that person for that. God is that's okay, right? Like things happen for a reason, but they always work out for your good. But at least now you know more about yourself. You know more about yourself around maybe controlling aspects. Or I even speak from my perspective. I know more around myself to be controlling. I know more around myself to where I can hold on to things and stew onto them and they can come up and I'll just blow up out of nowhere. And then the person's like, where did all this come from? And that's me bottling things up and not wanting to express how I may feel. Again, you got to do things to where people will be open to receiving it and people will be open to talking. But you also have to acknowledge maybe where you are in the process of forgiving or maybe not forgiving. Forgiveness, again, isn't an overnight process. And I think certain life events have to happen before you even get to the moment or the thought around like, hey, I actually want to forgive this person. I think that again, forgiveness can be a forgiveness of a friend, a ex, a family member. Forgiveness is broad. It's not a very like no vision term to where you're like, oh, this is forgiveness. No, I think forgiveness has many different meanings for a lot of advantages. One, again, for you, not for the other person. It can be healing when two people forgive each other. But I think if you want internal fixing or you want internal joy and relief around certain situations, you got to start with yourself. Again, RuPaul says like, how the hell are you going to love yourself if how the hell are you going to love someone else if you don't love yourself? And I think forgiveness is part of loving yourself. This is really, really good. I'm so excited and I'm so happy that these are actually things that you all enjoy hearing about. And I would love more feedback. But again, my goal for this podcast is to publish a new one every Monday. That way, you're going into your week refreshed and you're ready to take on whatever comes your way. Again, I feel so lucky and so blessed to even be here recording another episode for my podcast. And I hope if you take anything away, I hope you can take away things that may just no longer be serving you internally. And I hope that you allow the space to show up and you allow yourself to show up in that moment and say, I want to work towards that, or this is my North Star around maybe someone or a situation that you need forgiveness or you need relief from. It can be very powerful and it can be very relieving, especially for your internal things. What else? What else do I want to share? I think that's it. I just want to thank everyone for the support. And I want to thank a very special someone in my life for holding me accountable. It truly means a lot to me. And I think this is a space I'm actually working on a content room. You kind of can see a little bit, and this is a picture of my mom. She's in the back. I feel like she's always watching over me, but I'm curating this space and I call it my content room, or we call it our content room, where we host a podcast. We invite people, and you'll now be seeing more live people actually versus just me. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm excited to just take my podcast to the next level. So I appreciate your support. Again, would love any feedback, maybe topics that you want to hear about. But I think I have a good 6 or 7 more topics to push out over the next few weeks. Again, my name is Cam. I am based out of Dallas, and thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in. I always like to leave with a song that may speak to my heart or speak to this topic that I've just talked about. And the song that I probably would encourage you to play right now is What's Love Got to Do with It by Tina Turner. So I will talk to you all next Monday. Have a good one.